Once upon a time, in a magical place where the trees stretched up to tickle the sky and stars winked through the leaves, lay the Whispering Woods. The nights in these woods were never silent, the wind sang lullabies, the stream babbled, and most importantly, the guardians of the forest, the owls, greeted each other with a soft hoo-hoo. In the oldest oak tree of the forest, there was the school for young owls. And the quietest, shyest student in the class was a little owl named Otis. Otis was a lovely owl with fluffy feathers, giant amber eyes, and a white heart-shaped face. But Otis had a big secret. While the other owls could spot a tiny beetle from 100 meters away, Otis couldn't see very well at all. To him, the night wasn't made of sharp lines, but of fuzzy shadows. The moon didn't look like a bright ball, but more like a glowing smudge of spilled milk. One night, the flight instructor, Professor Percival, gathered the class. "Right then, little ones," hooted the professor. "Tonight, our lesson is sharp sight. Who can be the first to spot the shining silver beetle in the bushes below?" The most popular owl in class, Sterling, immediately spread his wings. Sterling's eyes were like telescopes. "Spot on, Professor," shouted Sterling. "I see it. Right there, next to the bluebell flower." And whoosh, he dived down and tagged the beetle. The other students, Ivy and Felix, found their targets instantly too. When it was Otis's turn, the poor little owl squinted his eyes and turned his head this way and that. But the ground below was just a dark, grey blur. Said Otis with a trembling voice. Is it by that big rock?" Otis dived down, but instead of a rock, he flew towards a sleeping hedgehog. The hedgehog jumped in fright, and Otis had to brake hard, crashing clumsily into a branch. Thud! Sterling and the others giggled. "We need an owl with spectacles," they whispered. Otis was so embarrassed that his face turned bright red under his feathers. "I am useless," he thought. "If an owl cannot see in the night, what good is he?" When the lesson ended, instead of playing with the others, Otis retreated to the quietest, darkest corner of the woods. He squeezed his eyes shut. He couldn't see much when they were open anyway, so closing them made him feel calm. And that was when Otis's secret power came alive. When he closed his eyes, the world turned into a completely different map. Otis couldn't see well, but he could hear. He could hear better than anyone else in the forest. He could hear a caterpillar munching on a leaf 50 meters away, crunch, crunch. He could hear a mole digging a tunnel underground, scritch, scratch. He could even hear the wind whistling a tune as it passed through the branches. His ears were like the world's most sensitive radar. But Otis didn't know this was a talent. He just thought it was a habit he used to stop bumping into things. Days passed. Autumn arrived, and a great fog descended upon the Whispering Woods. This fog was so thick you couldn't see the end of your own beak. The moonlight vanished, and the stars were wiped away. The forest was trapped inside a thick, white cloud. That night, panic spread through the woods. Mrs. Bramble, the mother rabbit, came running to the owl school tree, crying, "Help! Please, help!" she sobbed. "My little baby, Button. Tiny Button is lost. He was playing, but when the fog came down, he couldn't find his way home." Professor Percival immediately called his best students. "Sterling, Ivy, take flight at once and search for Button." Sterling puffed out his chest and took off. But 2 minutes later, he returned. "Professor," Sterling gasped, out of breath. "I can't see a thing. The fog is like a wall. It's all white below. I can barely see the trees, let alone a tiny bunny." Ivy tried too, but she failed as well. "Our eyes are useless in this fog," they said sadly. Mrs. Bramble fell to the ground, weeping. "My baby is out there in the cold and dark, terrified. Will no one find him?" Just then, from the very back of the branch, a small voice spoke up. I can try." Everyone turned around. It was Otis. Sterling laughed unkindly. "You, Otis. You bump into trees on a clear night. What will you do in this fog?" Otis didn't look at Sterling, he looked at the crying mother rabbit. His heart was thumping. He was scared, but the thought of Button being alone out there was scarier than his fear. "I don't need to see," whispered Otis. "I won't use my eyes." Otis took a deep breath, spread his wings, and dropped into the empty, white void of the fog. He squeezed his eyes shut tight. Now, there was only darkness and sound. First, he heard the noise of the forest. The roaring wind, the babbling brook, the footsteps of a distant fox. It was too much. It felt like everyone was shouting at once. Otis felt dizzy. "Focus, Otis," he told himself. "A small bunny. A scared bunny. What does that sound like?" He turned his ears like a radar, left and right. He filtered out the stream. Splosh. No, not that. He filtered out the wind. Whoosh. Not that either. He filtered out the flapping wings. And then, far, far away, near the old willow tree, he caught a tiny sound that even the wind struggled to carry. Thump, thump, pit. It was a heartbeat. A fast, frightened, tiny heartbeat. And then a very thin squeak, "Mummy." Otis's eyes were still closed, but a light switched on in his mind. He knew exactly where the sound was coming from. He turned sharply. The fog didn't matter, because the world was always blurry to him anyway. He was following a map of sounds. He glided through the trees. A bit to the left. He thought. He had heard a twig snap on the left. Now down. The rustle of dry leaves sounded different down there. Finally, he landed in the thickest part of the bramble bushes. He perched right in the middle of a thorny patch. "Button," whispered Otis. A trembling voice came from deep within the bush. "Who is there?" "Don't be afraid, Button," said Otis gently. I am Otis. Your mummy is waiting for you. I have come to take you home. Button cried, but I can't see anything, it's too dark. Otis smiled. That's all right, Button. I know the way. Just follow my voice. Listen to the wind from my wings. Otis took off, making soft, reassuring sounds. Hoo-hoo, I am here, step right, now left, guiding Button every step of the way. Button followed Otis's voice and found his way out of the fog and the thorns. A little while later, the crowd under the oak tree saw two shadows emerging from the mist. In front glided Otis, and hopping safely behind him was tiny Button. Button, cried Mrs. Bramble, hugging her baby tight. The whole forest fell silent for a moment. Then, a huge cheer erupted. Professor Percival, Sterling, Ivy, and everyone else were astonished. Sterling hopped over to Otis. He hung his head in shame. Otis, he said. I can see perfectly, but I couldn't even find my own beak out there. How did you do it? How did you find Button in that pitch black? Otis puffed out his chest. He didn't feel shy anymore. I don't see the world like you do, Sterling, he said. I listen to it. I hear the song of the leaves, the whisper of the wind, and the beat of hearts. My eyes are in my ears. Professor Percival smiled and placed a wing on Otis's shoulder. You have taught us a great lesson tonight, Otis, he said. Being different doesn't mean something is missing. Being different means you can do things others cannot. You are the best owl this forest has ever seen, or rather, heard. From that night on, Otis never felt sad about his poor eyesight again. Sometimes he still bumped into branches during flight class, and everyone laughed, including Otis. But whenever someone got lost in the woods, or a secret needed finding, there was only one name everyone called, Otis. Because the animals of the Whispering Woods now knew that sometimes, to see the truth, you don't need eyes. You need a listening heart, and a pair of super ears. And Otis lived happily ever after, listening to the most beautiful songs of the forest. The end.